Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to today's edition of Oaka Partner Insights. Thank you ever so much for joining us for today's session, which, unsurprisingly, given where we were at last month, this month, sorry, is an Ignite recap. We've got a whole ton of content to take you through today, as always, and I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague Nigel.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Thanks for taking the time. As always with Oaka Partner Insights, for those of you that haven't joined us for one of these sessions yet, we run these monthly, and they are designed to be as big a deep dive as they can possibly be in the space of 45 minutes on a key topic that partners are facing within that time period. So we're always open for ideas on topics that you'd like us to cover. For those of you that have joined us before, we've covered solution designations, go-to-market strategies, what AI means to your organization, both internally and to your customers. And we have a whole suite of 12 months worth planned out for you over the next period. But we would love to hear from you. So at any point, do just feel free to drop us an email on info@oaka.studio or put some messages in the chat. As always, we are watching the Q&A. So if you have any questions that come up throughout the session, do feel free to pop them in there or also in the chat. And we've got some designated time at the end to go through those. And we welcome you to come off camera, come off mute and get part of the conversation. We want to make this as interactive a session as possible. So without further ado, what we're going to cover today. So we are going to take you through some of the key themes that came out of Microsoft Ignite, and most importantly, give you a bit of an Oaka perspective as to what we think they really mean, and how quickly we feel that they might need to be reacted to as a result. We're then going to take you through a bit of a top of the pop style top 10 of announcements, both product and partner related. That will be a bit of a whistle stop, so bear with us, but you will as always, receive a copy of the slides. So if you want to go through them in a bit more detail, you absolutely can do. And then finally, we're going to leave you with a couple of actions to take back to your desks and put into practice within your own organization. But before we do that, I did sort of allude to this slightly earlier, but we have got a bit of an age warning on this, don't we, Nigel?
Yes, it's not that Lucy and I are doing this webinar in the nude. That's not going to happen. You'll be very thankful to hear. But we did just want to put a little bit of a warning that there's going to be some stuff here, hopefully in our views, that you may find a little challenging or maybe controversial. Remember, Oaka's whole remit is to help you be successful as a Microsoft partner, and that means that we're always looking at where the money is, and how you can be most successful, even if that means twisting some of the Microsoft messaging, reinterpreting it in terms of being a partner, etc., etc. So you might hear one or two views during this that some may say are controversial.
They've been warned. They've been warned. Controversial messaging inbound. So firstly, I just wanted to set the scene. I know many of you on this call have been part of the Microsoft partner ecosystem for a while, but for those of you that haven't, what is Ignite? Well, Microsoft Ignite is Microsoft's new annual flagship event. So historically, there used to be a dedicated event focused only on partners, and that was called Inspire. As many of you will have known, that's been run in Vegas for the last kind of 5 years over COVID, etc. Inspire has now been wrapped into Ignite. And so there is now no longer a dedicated partner-focused event. It is a segment of Ignite. So what that means, I think in realistic terms, is as a partner, if you were considering going, the bonus is that there will be end users there. There are delegates that are CTOs, CIOs, considering their Microsoft strategy within their organization, as well as a very strong partner presence. As always, there is a huge delegation of Microsofties, both from the corporate business, i.e. Seattle and the program and engineering team, but also from each individual sales area, as they're now calling them, instead of subsidiary as they used to be known. So in terms of if you have yet to go, or if you are thinking, is Ignite worth the investment for us as a partner? I would say consider this. Do you have a partner that you can, or a customer that you can take with you to inspire and to, excuse the pun, ignite their inspiration in a new technology area? Let's face it, AI was absolutely at the forefront of the conversation this year. Are you able to perhaps get in front of some prospects and bring them and use that as an incentive? Or if you're looking just more broadly to grow your own internal team or to improve your relationships with Microsoft individuals themselves and establish or grow some of those friendships and relationships, then absolutely. One of the areas where we see partners succeed in attending these events is ensuring that they are being really proactive in putting meetings in the diary, ensuring that you're at every after party. You may be even hosting your own alongside the event itself. So if you do want to chat specifically on whether you think it's worth your investment, next year the event is going to be hosted again in San Francisco as it was this year, and the dates have gone live. They are going to be the 17th to the 20th of November 2026, and the main area is the Moscone Center in San Francisco. Now, again, controversially, I have heard that many people didn't think that San Francisco was a fab location. There was areas all over the city where many of the sessions were held, and so it's quite difficult to navigate. So if you are going, I'd strongly encourage you to invest in Citymapper, Waygo, whatever your travel method of choice, to make sure you're at the right place at the right time. But feel free to reach out if we can support you in your decision making or building your business case back into your organization. But most importantly, the key themes that came out of this year's event that wrapped last week. We wanted to start by taking a look at Microsoft's specific perspective on who they think from the partner ecosystem is going to benefit the most from the announcements last week. So top of that list is very much ISVs, independent software vendors, or as Microsoft have now rebranded them to, SDCs, software development companies. So they have placed a massive focus on some of the launches on being packaging of vertical agents and Copilot extensions, and they are putting huge emphasis on the importance of getting those capabilities transactable on Microsoft Marketplace. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then definitely drop me a line, because that should be, if Microsoft haven't said AI in the first 3 minutes of a conversation, they will have said Marketplace. And it was a huge theme that was coming out of Ignite this year. Secondly, SIs. So particularly unsurprisingly around the topic of AI, they are looking to SIs to help support their customers to design governance strategies, how those customers can integrate their agents into their workflows, and of course, drive enterprise rollouts of AI at scale. Don't we all want to do that, hey Nige?
You certainly do.
Thirdly, MSPs and CSPs. So they've done a lot of work around optimization of agent platforms at scale to help drive efficiencies in securing licensing, driving allocation of those licenses to users. So, those MSPs are really coming out on top with some of those efficiencies. But finally, and to reiterate what I've just mentioned, this new unified marketplace, Microsoft Marketplace, which brings together AppSource and Azure Marketplace as was, that now combines partner-built SaaS solutions, partner-built accelerators on top of BizApps type capability or AI business solution capability like Dataverse, Dynamics, Power Platform, etc. The concept of this resale-enabled offer, or REO, is more powerful now than ever. And for those of you that feel that this needs to be wrapped into your capability and your offering, stick around, because we've got an announcement on our next event, our next Oaka Partner Insights, which will be completely around this topic, focused on the distribution of your services and capability via Microsoft Marketplace. But in terms of overarching themes, Nigel, we weren't surprised at all, were we?
No, there were really two main themes, and this first one, I think it was about a year ago that Microsoft started talking about it. So I don't think that this is a massive surprise. I guess what what could potentially be a surprise is that a year later they're still feeling they need to talk about it, which might point a little bit to the to the level of take up and examples they've got of their partners being customer zeros, or what they've more recently called frontier firms. So the whole idea here was that if you're going to get into having AI conversations with your customer base and prospects, and you're really going to be positioned in that area, then the best place to start is to make sure that you've looked at your own business and worked out how you can use AI to improve what you do yourselves. So at least you've got a solid reference, albeit it's your own business. And you can see Microsoft actually doing this themselves. They have, we'll get into seeing more examples of this when we come to our countdown of announcements. But yeah, they certainly have used AI within their business to ultimately, reduce a huge amount of headcount and improve and automate a lot of their processes. So it's interesting, I think, that this is still the conversation a year after we first heard it, but I guess it's not a massive surprise.
Yeah, if we could see all your faces, I'd have done a joking hands up for how many times have we heard the phrase frontier firm in the last 5 minutes, but that phrase is not going anywhere soon. Equally, neither is customer zero. And so for those of you on the call that are not yet or are in the early stages of considering how you wrap AI into your own internal partner processes, the more you can document what you're doing and articulate that messaging back to Microsoft, assuming it's on Microsoft capability, the better. I have been involved in several quarterly business reviews with managed Microsoft partners where one of the key questions coming out of some of the local execs is, what are you doing yourselves and how are you metricing? How are you applying metrics to what you're doing? So if you take one thing out of this session today, then make sure you're articulating that effectively or managing what you're doing. And then I guess the other observation I had recently, I had the pleasure of attending an event hosted by Arrow, where there was about 300 partners in attendance, and Ape from Microsoft, who leads the kind of cloud and AI specialist team for SMB, asked the question, who has got an internal strategy, an internal AI strategy? And out of the 300 partners in the room, 3 hands went up. And I was actually quite blown away because I feel like to your point, Nigel, we've been having this conversation a lot. But still, I think there is opportunity for growth in terms of documenting how you are approaching your own internal implementation, governance, and adoption of AI within your business. But that's it on the AI topic, right, Nigel? That's the last time we're going to mention it. Oh, wait, no.
No. We're going to do a lot more.
Yeah. And I guess we wanted to summarize where we are seeing excellence at the moment on this key theme. So at the moment, within the partners we have the pleasure of engaging with that are taking AI to their customer base, we are seeing a lot of the following: user story development, identifying hypotheses within organizations that they can satisfy by building a Copilot agent, or they can support or improve by building one of those agents. Equally, we're seeing some of the kind of the softer service offerings around envisioning, helping the customers themselves to identify what those hypotheses or those challenges or process inefficiencies could be that could be fixed by an agentic capability. Obviously, the preparedness topic is vital, and we've got an absolute corker of a phrase later on that I'm not going to steal the lead on, that talks to the point of we shouldn't just be thinking about what do we need to do to be prepared. If we're not even thinking about that yet, we're already a bit far behind. We should actually be getting going. But we are still seeing lots of partners deriving value and opportunity out of supporting their customers in building data or governance preparedness for AI implementations. Sprint as a service is an interesting one. So, landing a pod of individuals into an organization to both identify and build out rapidly, fail or win fast on building out the justification or the capability to support some of those challenges they've just identified. Custom agent development is obvious, a little bit further along, and the customer understands the problem they want to fix and they're coming to you to build it. Agent-a-thons is one of my favorites, getting one-to-many type engagements where they're dragging individuals from across the business to, kind of hack out some of these scenarios. And I guess probably least obvious, and one of those scenarios where we're not seeing organizations perhaps react quickly enough, is the development of workload specific, industry aligned specific, industry focused agents. Let's think financial services, KYC check scenarios. And Microsoft come to us on a fairly regular basis and ask us which partners are leading the charge in developing these workload industry specific agent accelerators. And we're not seeing it as regularly as we feel we should be, or we feel would drive value for the partner ecosystem. And that quote I mentioned, you don't have to be great to get going, but you do have to get going to be great, was actually said by Vala Afshar, who is ironically the chief digital evangelist at Salesforce. No one shoot me for mentioning the competitor. In fact, interestingly, I heard this quote on Nigel's own podcast, Standing Apart, that released recently, and I'll drop the link in the chat for those of you that want to hear it. I'd strongly encourage you to take a look. Vala and his colleague have just released their own book around this whole theme of how partners are deriving value and growing opportunity out of being boundless around the AI opportunity. And I think it's just a point that I wanted to leave you in. You do have to get going, both internally and with the messaging to your customers.
Yeah, I think before we, I think the point coming out of this is these, and how many times are we hearing the phrase use cases at the moment? It's like we've got to come up with ideas about where we can use agentic AI to automate processes. Let me give you a few thoughts on this. So I remember a number of years back, good businesses were coming up with the mantra: if you're not following a process, you should be writing one. You should be writing it. I think that then maybe in the last 10 years that has moved more into, if you're following a process, then you should be thinking about automating it. And we've seen the explosion of RPA tools, and Power Platform's got a really solid space there. But I think now we're moving on to automating those tasks that aren't as deterministic as the stuff that we can do in Power Platform. Now, to me, agents and RPA are two sides of the same coin. At the end of the day, they're both automations. And I think it's really important to have a very clear idea about when you should be using each. There is no doubt that Power Platform and that sort of automation, when in this circumstance this is the course of action that you take, should continue to be done in Power Platform. Why would you, when you've got a deterministic answer, why wouldn't you use a deterministic tool, that Power Platform, to automate that process? It's only when there are subtleties and more of a sense of a feeling around it, or you're going to get the answer by trawling through lots of documentation, that sort of thing, where agentic AI will be a better tool. We were talking to a partner not that long ago about this, and we probably still felt that well over 50%, could even be as much as 80% of automation would still be done in that deterministic way using tools like Power Automate, and that the agentic stuff is trying to fill that gap where it's not that easy to determine the course of action in a kind of if then else way. But I think the other thing here is that, and I spend a lot of time looking outside of the Microsoft world about who's doing what with AI and who's being successful and the ways in which they are. And I think um, that gradual process of picking use case by use case is a great place to start, and in a way, everybody should start that way. But I don't think that will be the answer to scale. So what I mean when I put on here that it's not where you will end up. You won't just do more use cases. What the really innovative businesses will be doing is that they will be reimagining parts of their business. And if we move on to the next slide, I think I think that this is the way they'll do it. And some of you who've seen me speak over the last 6 months or so will have heard me talking about burning ships. So it used to be that the way you used to bring about big changes in business is there were really two approaches. The first one is you can take little increments, you can take little bits of evolution, and in some ways that is doing the picking off these use cases by use cases. It's a small evolution. The problem with evolution is that it's slow, and that by the time 6 9 months has passed, that destination path that you thought you were on, you may well have kind of evolved your way off that path, it's almost like you've forgotten what your destination was. The other way of changing businesses was something that's called paradigm shift, which is basically saying we're not going to do anything like this anymore overnight, and we're going to and do things differently. I think to a certain extent, this is what if I'm hearing somebody. Make sure everybody's on mute. With paradigm shift, I think to a certain extent, this is what Microsoft have done. They almost got rid of the people before they worked out how they were going to make sure that those functions still happened. But I think the way to look at it is more this burning ships idea. And this comes from when the conquistadors arrived in South America. And their captains were ordered to burn the ships, so that the crew couldn't just sail back to Spain, having not achieved very much. They actually had to establish towns and partnerships with the locals, and usually involved killing a lot of locals. But that's another story. But the way that this manifests itself in business is by saying, at this point in the future, we're not going to do this function with humans anymore, or at this point in the future, we're only going to recruit new people where we can prove that that their skills are not going to be able to be done by AI. It's about setting a point in the future, a stake in the ground, that then you can start thinking, okay, in which case, what do we got to do in order to make sure that by the end of next year, for example, we have no people in the contact center. And it's that level of reimagining that I think is what the most successful businesses will be doing with this. And you won't get there through this evolution of little incremental steps. It's this complete reimagining of business processes that I think is where we're going to lead to.
So the recipe has to change. Hey, Nigel?
Yeah, the recipes that we have all used to package up our services, our the software we sell, everything. The old recipes are not going to work in that sort of environment. And I guess this is where we come back to our 18 certificate thing, because this is big, scary stuff. We have sales teams that go out and have conversations. We have marketing teams that support them. We have commission structures. We have delivery teams that estimate and then go and do projects and delivery, and we charge for hours or days. That recipe is about to change big time. And even those of us who keep very close to it and look across a very big partner community, and those of us who are looking outside the Microsoft world, cannot be clear about what it is that's going to work entirely in this new world. But we're absolutely convinced that the recipe that we've been using for many, many years to make our livings and grow our businesses is going to change beyond all recognition.
So I hear you. The recipe has to change, and I do, it's quite a daunting message, and there is obviously a discussion around when and how quickly, and what if we don't? But if the current mechanism, the way that we're offering our services to our customers, has to change, then where do we find opportunity? Where is the money?
As I say, I think very few organizations, certainly very few Microsoft partners, have really worked out what this looks like yet. But I want to give you an example of an organization that is hoovering up major projects around the place, and they're a company that some of you may have come across called Palantir. Palantir doesn't have any sales teams. Okay, so that's interesting in itself. What they do is they put what they called forward pods of 2 to 3 engineers into their prospects, with a combination of things, which I'll explain in a second. But within 4 to 6 weeks, they've automated a business process, and they get to the end of that 4 to 6 weeks, and the option for the client is to pay for it.
She gave it to me, but I've used it now.
Sorry, could you go on mute if you're? I can hear somebody talking in the background. The option is to pay for it on a subscription basis, that automation that's been built, or it's turned off. Well, that's something we've never seen from a commercial perspective before. What those engineer forward pods have is a combination of RPA type tools, so things like Power Automate, and they also have AI models and agents that they can take in for that particular business process. One of the things that we see as being the biggest kind of blockers to some of this major business change through AI is people are looking at their own data and say, well, it's in such a mess, we can't predict anything off the back of it. And if we can't predict it, then we're going to struggle to automate it. Now, what Palantir have is data sets that they can take in and say, well, look, don't worry about the fact your data is terrible. We've already got data. Whether it's sales propensity data, or whether it's, how likely is somebody, given a certain set of characteristics, likely not to, pay their invoices on time, whatever it is, Palantir have built up that combination of RPA type tools, AI models, agents, and data to go in and automate that process. And they're hoovering up central government business at the moment. So what can we glean from that? A lot of us are not competing in that sort of area, but let's just break down some of the things that they're doing that is very different to what we've been used to. No sales teams, forward pods of engineers, that combination of automation skills, AI models, agents, and data, and then not charging anything until the thing is finished, and then signing up people for long-term subscriptions, or it gets turned off. There is very little in that model that we see in the Microsoft community. Now, I'm not saying that this is the answer, but it is interesting when you take each of those aspects and think about the fact that the recipe that would have been useful, it is about to change, and we've got to think absolutely fundamentally about how we operate in this new world.
It's really groundbreaking what they're doing at Palantir, Nigel, and I think it's really eye-opening and certainly giving lots of food for thought. Jonathan's just asked, do we think they'll stay in business for long with that kind of model? I guess, recurring revenue, etc.
Yeah. I mean, so it is the recurring revenue, and they are being able to automate processes that other people can't reach because of their pre-built model plus data. So actually they're taking business that nobody else is really being able to compete with, and then they're signing people up for 5 to 10 year subscription contracts based on each process that they're automating. And that pod then just moves into the second one. They are, you're absolutely right, James. They're selling outcomes.
Take it or leave it thereafter.
That's such a different way of working to selling hours or days, which we've all been used to. I use it as an example because it's simply because the recipe that we've been using is going to have to change.
Yeah. I think one of the, I'm putting my alliance hat on as well here. As you know, I have a tendency to, Nigel, and I think, when we think about how we position this kind of capability back into Microsoft, they're constantly asking us as Oaka, who is moving the needle from a Copilot perspective or an AI Foundry or a Foundry perspective, and it's this kind of mind shift switch that's really grabbing their attention. However, we do still, from the other perspective, at the end of the day, if Microsoft is a big channel of a channel for you as a partner, how are we articulating back to Microsoft what this translates to from a consumption perspective or from a licensing revenue perspective? And I think, again, Palantir may not have to worry about that because it's likely using a different product stack. Or I don't know.
But its own proprietary.
Yeah, so they're not so worried about how it's driving consumption for Microsoft. Okay, other key themes. I'm not going to spend too long on this slide because
we had a good laugh about it yesterday.
We did because I actually don't think it says much, being brutally honest. I think, to Nigel's point earlier, we've had the term frontier firm and customer zero now for well over a year. And I think this concept of democratizing intelligence really reminds me of what we heard about 5 or 6 years ago with democratizing app development in low code with the launch of Power Platforms, probably longer ago than 5 or 6 years ago now, isn't it? I'm showing my age here. I think ultimately the outcome or the takeaway we should take from this human plus Copilot plus intelligence is Microsoft have never been more aware that users expect access to an AI agent. They are experiencing them at home. They've got them on their phones. They're using them for every area of their lives. That doesn't stop them from ever wanting them at work and in their workplace. So Microsoft have placed a massive focus on making sure their capability is democratized as possible, so that the AI agents that these end users are using at work are grounded in the governed areas that their employer would hope and expect. Is where I think they were going with this slide. We can debate this. Cool. Let's move on now to the partner announcements. There was a couple that I really thought were quite interesting. The first one being this launch of Copilot for SMB. I think we've all been quite aware, particularly in the partner space, that Copilot's, it's not cheap. I think we can all talk about return on investment and paint a model on it'll easily pay for itself. But this Copilot for Business, which is launching in a couple of days, is really quite powerful. And there's some really interesting bundles available for M365 customers as well. I'm not going to go through this slide word for word, you'll be pleased to know. But I do think for those of you that are positioning capability into small to medium-sized businesses in the UK, this is going to be really interesting. And joyfully, Microsoft have released a whole ton of assets that you can use to help promote this capability. Again, historically, they've not necessarily been something we'd advocate that you use, but I've had a look through these and I think they're a really good starter for 10 in terms of helping you articulate why an organization should think about deploying Copilot for SMB. So these links will be shared in the slides once this webinar is finished. Secondly, some fabulous new certifications. These are really quite powerful, as always, to make sure that your team are enabled. But I think more importantly, bit of a flag, it's likely that these certs are going to be involved in the attainment of solution designations. We know there is likely to be a significant refresh of designations in the coming months. And so if you can get on the front foot with some of these net new certs that were launched at Ignite, I would really be strongly encouraging that. I think particularly the last two, the business professional and the transformation leader, are just giving a really good bedrock, a good foundation of how to have some of these conversations, as we've talked about already in today's webinar. So those are the two key partner announcements we felt pertinent to bring. But now it's time for those of you that will be a millennial like me will recognize this logo. The top 10 product announcements that came from Ignite. And we're going to whistle through this because we have just a few minutes left. In at number 1, Agent 365. So this is a tool to give visibility for an individual across every agent whilst enforcing controls and provide you with an easy mechanism to manage your agents. So think admin center, but with a much cooler name. It allows you to build safe and secure way for your agents to access apps and data, so you can provide some level of user governance, and obviously security is at the forefront of their mind. There are some pretty cool security features involved in Agents 365. Next up.
Security Copilot into E5. I think what you'll see with these, with a lot of these announcements, is Microsoft just embedding generative AI into its products that have been around for some time. So, Defender, Entra, Intune, Purview. Some of those have got fairly new names, but as technologies, they've been around really since Microsoft moved into cloud. So now we're seeing that Microsoft are embedding AI technology into these sorts of tools. So that's the Security Copilot.
Copilot 4 is a consistent theme of the rest of these, I think.
Microsoft Azure AI Foundry. If you're still thinking only in the Copilot world and you haven't really got into Azure AI Foundry, that may be where you need to make some investments and start having a think about, because this is the stuff that is really going to move the needle with your end customers. We know Microsoft's investment in OpenAI, so that has been embedded in Foundry for a long time. Anthropic, which was a spin out from early OpenAI, you might know it more commonly by the LLM's name, which is Claude. That is now available in Foundry, which is good news because Claude is excellent for certain purposes.
Absolutely.
And then we've got again, this one I really like. It comes into the Azure AI Foundry again. The different LLMs have quite a lot of different properties, and they're good for different tasks. I don't know whether you put the same prompt into into ChatGPT and then put it into Gemini and then put it into Claude and then put it into Grok or whatever, but you get quite different responses. This is a very cool piece of technology that basically routes what you the prompt you've got to dynamically pick from 12 of the best LLMs out there. That's I'm not quite sure how it works out that that's going to cost you less, but maybe it's the fact it'll automatically pick the best tool. But there's a load of science behind this, but the LLMs are very different. So I'm really glad to see Microsoft doing one of the things it always has been good at, which is being a little bit agnostic and kind of open source orientated. So the fact that it's picking from other models other than the one it's invested 10 billion in is quite nice.
It's always generous, right? Open mindset,
Yeah.
growth mindset. And with that topic in mind, as a storyteller and not a completer finisher, one of the updates that was announced at Ignite, by no means a product launch, is upgrades to this concept of work IQ. So work IQ is ultimately Copilot individualized on acid. It's living and breathing by the insight that it has on you, and it is the intelligence layer behind Copilot and agents. So ultimately enhancing kind of workplace personalization. So it brings things like conversational memory into Copilot, and it will remember context and details across sessions. It'll draw from multiple work profiles and provide custom like ideas or instructions to the user to give a more richer, personalized work IQ, excuse the pun. So ultimately generating your own workload to-do list and not letting you drop any balls that you might have floating about. So I am a massive ambassador for work IQ, and glad to see these updates landing.
Rattle through this one, but Fabric has now taken up this theme of having more and more AI built into it. And I've got a note here, it becomes the semantic backbone for every team, application and AI agent. Who doesn't need more of that in their life?
I'm all about the semantic backbone, Nige. Absolutely. All about it. Now, next up, the intelligence layer. So this is agents sitting between structured and unstructured data. So think Fabric IQ and Foundry IQ, and the intelligence and knowledge for the agents to become that link for the structured and unstructured data. I'm going to leave it at that. Anything more technical, drop us a line. And my personal favorite, because I feel like this sounds like a PC from the early 90s. I remember Lexmark, those days. The Azure Cobalt 200. So this is a completely cloud native CPU that's gone into preview. So it's built on ARM architecture. There is a huge amount of technical detail involved in Cobalt, but ultimately it's delivering 50% higher performance than its predecessor. So for those of you that are all about the CPU, definitely check out the updates from an Azure Cobalt 200 perspective. And then finally, Azure Copilot agents. Nigel talked to it earlier. We're whacking a Copilot into every bit of first-party capability to make using that first-party capability better, easier, and ultimately require less support from Microsoft's own teams. So it's driving things like recommended paths. It's helping you lower your costs from an Azure consumption perspective, all of the good stuff that you would expect to come from an inbuilt Copilot within a Microsoft tool. And then I said this was the final one, but really this is the final one. One of the things that I actually think is a really fabulous takeaway from Ignite is that Microsoft have gone ahead and built their own customer ready and customer facing readiness assessment. So you guys may have already invested in something like this. And I think, as always with the case, when Microsoft releases something they've previously asked their partner organization to build themselves, there's probably opportunities for both to be successful. But I have to say, I have been through this AI readiness assessment, and there is a huge amount of value that comes out of the output of this document. So definitely go ahead and give it a stab yourselves. What I like is that it combines and covers the key 5 topics from the agent readiness framework. So everything from kind of like governance, strategy, security, data preparedness, all the way through to process mapping. So if you don't have one yourself, do feel free to offer this to your customers and work with them on the output. Now, I'm conscious that we are at time, but the most important bit is yet to come because the fun stuff is still here. But before we go on to that, we wanted to leave you with this kind of parting message, if you like. So we want you to consider being a frontier firm, yes, of course, but do start thinking now about what your next destination is going to look like. What does your next service offering look like? What's your next capability within your organization? What's your next key hire? How is that going to help you not just be a frontier firm, but really adjust the model of your business to meet with the demands that Microsoft are giving? Okay, so the fun stuff, the action. We have got some questions in the chat. And hopefully, if you don't mind, I'm going to come to them just after I share these news. So if you do have any more questions, pop them in the chat or let me know, put your hand up and we'll take you off mute. But there was a couple of key activities I wanted you to go and take a look at. For those of you that aren't aware, there is a fabulous awards program called the Digital Revolution Awards that happens every year, and you have the ability to nominate and potentially be successful in winning an award across multiple vendors, but it covers everything from Salesforce, Snowflake, etc. But there is a huge Microsoft theme. The nominations close just in a couple of days, so there's still chance for you to submit. Perhaps you've got a project that you're incredibly proud of, a digital transformation project or an AI project, or you're heavily involved in the technology community, or you've done some DE&I capability. I would urge you, over the weekend or later on, go and take a look at the Digital Revolution Award categories and nominations and go and have a stab at nominating. Oaka are proud to be sponsors of this award. We're not incentivized by you nominating yourselves at all, but it's a really lovely event that's happening in April of next year, and it's really lovely to see some of the partners that we work with showcase the success of their projects that they have with their customers or their individuals in their team. On the topic of awards and programs, the Fast Track Recognized Solution Architect program is open for nominations. So if you have an individual within your organization who has excellence in delivering projects at scale or within the quality, and you're really proud of what they're doing, perhaps they're an MVP or something along those lines, do go and take a look at the FTRSA award nominations. It's incredibly it's a fabulous accolade to hold yourself, or if you're considering it for yourself, but it's also a really good one as an organization to have FTRSAs on your book. So do take a look at those. I've popped the links into the chat. We run these Oaka Partner Insights, as I say, every month. You'll be pleased to know that we are bringing next month's Oaka Partner Insights forward. Otherwise, it would land on Christmas Day. So this coming month, it's actually going to be on the 11th. And we're going to be joined by Darren Sharp of Microsoft, who's going to take us through what we should be thinking of as partners with the Microsoft marketplace, especially now Microsoft has released at Ignite this whole resale enabled offer capability. So he'll be taking you through a really pragmatic kind of, this is why you should think about it, this is why you should care, and most importantly, this is how you should do it. Do feel free to scan the link to register for that event, and we'd be delighted to see you there. We also run our quarterly Partner Pulse events. For those of you on the call that have been before, forgive me because you'll know some of this, but these events are designed to be a really in-depth, educational, full-day event designed specifically for the Microsoft partner ecosystem across all solution areas, from AI business process, cloud and AI platforms, and security, to give you real tangible outcomes, right? We want you to leave the room with something you're going to go and implement into your organization, or connections you've made with other delegates in the room. We have got a fabulous Microsoft keynote speaker, and the date is the 28th of Jan. Scan that QR code to register your place. We do take a small fee for that, which goes straight to charity. We were delighted to donate just over £500 to a really lovely specialist educational needs school in Surrey last time, and we are taking nominations for registered charities for the donations from this event. We only do it to make sure that you've got your place secured. We'd love to see you there. As always, there will be networking drinks in the Union afterwards. So with that, I'd like to say a massive thank you to those of you for spending 51 minutes with us today. We always, as always, have overrun ever so slightly. Please do nominate any questions if you have them. I am going to pick up on the first question that we had from Nicola right early on in the session, actually, around the comment that we made on sector-specific or industry-specific agents. Nigel, she's asked that requirement from Microsoft. She's asked this on a regular basis. How do you suggest they address this topic of building these industry workload specific agents? They're really technically skilled, you know, they've got a great technology business, but they have not yet built, like she's used the example, a widget at an engineering firm. What would your guidance be?
Thanks for the question, Nick. I would say, to start with, I would look at horizontal agents, things that most organizations are going to need, because almost certainly you'll have experience of needing them within your own organization. So let's take that example of, you know, trying to predict who is likely to be late paying a bill, and therefore you might want to you know, start some sort of process early, which would be common in every business. You can get experience of that in your own place, but there's no reason why you couldn't stick a different industry name in front of that widget, which I guess one of the things that that we see ultimately in our businesses is that there's more in common between businesses than actually the differences. So you could call it the, you know, the engineering payment agent, but equally it could be the education payment agent. Because ultimately there will be very little difference. So I think a little bit of keeping it horizontal and then putting a little bit of sales gloss on it is probably the way to start. And then once you've got into an organization that is perhaps taking one or two of those more generic agents, then you could be working with them on ones that are more specific to whatever it is they do. So that would be my advice.
She mentions further that they're doing that and they're doing it well. The sellers want you to do more with agents to hit their license targets. And I think the second part of your statement covers that. You know, we see this with services partners trying to build a stronger relationship with Microsoft. You know, obviously you're driven by services revenue and professional services capability quite often. I think the trick is with these repeatable pieces of IP or these repeatable service offerings is building that kind of demand generation that's going to make it applicable to the rest of the accounts in their basis. So request their account list, offer some joint co-marketing activity to bring the other accounts on their list to the table and position your capability. As an example, I mean, this is a topic I could talk about for 5 or 6 hours, so I am going to keep it short, but probably even longer. But yeah, there are definitely mechanisms for, if you've proved the model in one of their accounts and they're an industry focused area, the trick is having a mechanism to get it into their other accounts by demonstrating the return on investment, the speed to implementation, the obvious objections as to why if they're not doing it, the challenges they'd be facing without having it. Right, Nigel, I think we haven't had any other questions. So with that, I'm going to let the guys go. Feel free, as always, to reach out to us on the email address shown on screen now, info@oaka.studio, and do join us on LinkedIn. All of the announcements of our next Oaka Partner Insights and Partner Pulse are promoted there first. And if you're not on our marketing list, do feel free to drop us a line and just let us know, and we'll make sure that you're there. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you, Nigel, for your input. I shall never put an 18 adults only reference on a slide deck again.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great rest of your day.
All right. Bye now.
Thank you.